The internet is a breeding ground for conspiracy theories. Some are harmless, others are destructive. Today, we expose one of the most outrageous fabrications circulating online. A story so bizarre and utterly false that it demands to be addressed. A disturbing narrative has been spreading across social media claiming that Rick Harrison from Pawn Stars was involved in multiple murders, including the death of Frank Fritz from American Pickers. According to this fictional tale, the FBI found bodies in Harrison's mansion, linking him to an international crime syndicate for smuggling antiquities. The story further claims that Harrison used his pawn shop as a front for laundering money and that he eliminated anyone who threatened to expose his operation. Let me be absolutely clear from the outset. This story is 100% fabricated. It is fiction. None of it is true. Rick Harrison has not been arrested, has not been involved in any murders, and there was no FBI raid on his home. Frank Fritz was not murdered. This video will methodically debunk every aspect of this dangerous fiction, present the verifiable facts about these television personalities, and explain why such false stories can cause real harm to real people. The fictional story circulating online reads like a poorly written crime novel. It claims the FBI raided Rick Harrison's mansion, discovering multiple bodies in his basement. It paints Harrison as a calculated serial killer who meticulously documented his crimes and collected trophies from his victims. The fabrication further alleges that Harrison was sentenced to life imprisonment for his crimes, including the murder of Frank Fritz from American Pickers. The story goes so far as to describe courtroom scenes that never happened and evidence that doesn't exist. It's worth emphasizing, none of this happened. Not a single element of the story is based in reality. It is pure fiction created either to generate clicks, spread misinformation, or simply cause confusion. In fact, in early 2025, Snopes and other fact-checking organizations had to specifically debunk rumors that Rick Harrison had been sentenced to life in prison. This latest fictional narrative appears to be an even more elaborate version of those earlier falsehoods, incorporating additional television personalities and an entire criminal conspiracy. The creation and spread of these stories highlight a disturbing trend in today's media landscape, where sensation often trumps truth. So, who is the real Rick Harrison? Rick Harrison is the star of History Channel's Pawn Stars, which began airing in 2009. He co-owned the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas with his late father, Richard Harrison, known as the Old Man on the show, until his father's death in 2018. The show features Rick, his son Corey Harrison, and family friend Austin Chumlee Russell as they operate their pawn business, appraising, buying, and selling items of historical interest and value. Rick's path to television success wasn't easy. He dropped out of high school after developing epilepsy, which led to him spending much of his youth reading books during his recovery periods. This created in him a passion for history and learning that would later become apparent in his television persona. Before Pawn Stars became a hit, Rick spent years pitching the idea of a show centered around a pawn shop, finally succeeding in 2009 when the History Channel picked it up. Since then, it has become one of the network's highest-rated shows. Rick remains active in the business and on television. As of 2025, Rick Harrison is not in jail, has not been arrested, and is not under investigation for any crimes. He continues to appear on Pawn Stars and run his businesses in Las Vegas. In February 2025, he launched a podcast called Pawn After Dark with his Pawn Stars co-star, Austin Chumlee Russell. Far from being a criminal mastermind, Rick Harrison is a businessman, television personality, and entrepreneur who has built his brand on his knowledge of history and antiques. In January 2024, Rick experienced a personal tragedy when his son, Adam, died from a fentanyl overdose at age 39. Adam was not involved in the Pawn Stars show, having chosen a different career path in plumbing. Since Adam's death, Rick has become an advocate against the fentanyl crisis, speaking out about the dangers of these drugs and pushing for stricter border control to prevent their entry into the United States. In interviews, Rick has spoken openly about his grief, saying there's nothing worse than losing a kid, and that he thinks about his son every day. He's also shared that he put Adam in rehab multiple times throughout his 20s as he struggled with addiction issues. Rick has been married several times and as of March 2025 is engaged to Angie Polushkin. Rick has 2 other sons besides the late Adam, Corey, who appears on Pawn Stars with him, and Jacon, who made his debut on the show in 2021. Rick remains focused on his family, his business, and his advocacy work, a far cry from the villainous character portrayed in the fictional Conspiracy. Rick Harrison has faced his share of legal challenges, but none remotely resembling the fictional crimes alleged in the conspiracy theory. In February 2022, his mother, Joanne Harrison, filed a lawsuit against him in a dispute over family assets and ownership of the Las Vegas business. She claimed that Rick made her sign over her interest in the business after she woke from a coma. Rick countered that his elderly mother was being manipulated by others for financial gain. This family dispute, while unfortunate, is the extent of Rick's publicly known legal issues, a far cry from the international criminal mastermind portrayed in the fictional narrative. What about Frank Fritz? Frank Fritz was a co-star on the History Channel show American Pickers from 2010 to 2020. Alongside Mike Wolfe, Frank traveled across America seeking valuable antiques and collectibles in junkyards, basements, and barns. The show showcased their expertise in finding overlooked treasures and negotiating their purchase, all while sharing the stories and history behind these items. Frank was known for his expertise in items like toys, vintage cars, and motorcycles, and for his more reserved personality compared to Mike's outgoing nature. Frank left the show after his last appearance in March 2020, and his departure was officially confirmed by the History Channel in July 2021. His exit followed a period of health issues, including back surgery, which required time off for recovery. During this time, Frank also underwent treatment for alcohol addiction, spending 77 days in rehab. He openly discussed these struggles in interviews, mentioning family history with substance abuse and how a difficult breakup had contributed to his drinking problems. On July 14, 2022, Frank suffered a serious stroke and was found on the floor of his Iowa home by a friend who rushed him to the hospital. The stroke severely impacted his health, affecting his mobility and requiring him to use a wheelchair. Following the stroke, court documents revealed that Frank's decision-making capacity was significantly impaired, leading to the appointment of a temporary guardian and conservator to manage his affairs and finances. During his recovery, Frank lived in an assisted living facility where he worked on regaining his verbal abilities and mobility. Sadly, on September 30th, 2024, Frank Fritz passed away from complications related to his stroke at age 60. His death was confirmed by his former co-star Mike Wolfe and various news outlets. According to medical reports, Frank died from late sequela of cerebral infarction, medical terminology for complications resulting from his stroke. Contributing factors included cerebral vascular disease and aortic stenosis, a chronic condition that makes blood flow throughout the body difficult. Frank was not murdered. He died due to documented health complications while in hospice care, surrounded by people who cared about him. Mike Wolfe, Frank's longtime friend and co-star on American Pickers, continues to host the show, which is currently in its 26th season as of late 2024. Their relationship began long before television fame. They had known each other since middle school and shared a passion for picking and antiques. Despite their reported falling out when Frank left the show, Mike and Frank reconciled before Frank's death. After Frank's stroke in 2022, Mike publicly asked fans to keep Frank in their thoughts and prayers, setting aside any past drama. In fact, Mike was with Frank in his final moments. According to Mike's own account, he was there for about an hour before Frank passed away, holding his hand and rubbing his chest when he took his last breath. Mike told him that he loved him in those final moments. After Frank's death, Mike shared a heartfelt tribute on social media, writing about their decades of friendship and their shared passion for picking. He described Frank as a dreamer who was just as sensitive as he was funny, and someone who had a way of reaching the hearts of so many by just being himself. Today, Mike continues filming American Pickers, and recently announced that Season 27 is officially in production. The show now features Mike alongside his brother Robbie Wolfe, longtime Office manager Danielle Colby, and newer addition John Saleh. However, the show has seen declining ratings since Frank's departure, with viewer numbers dropping significantly. Some fans have called for the show to be canceled rather than continue without Frank, highlighting the important role he played in the show's chemistry and appeal. Mike has recently made some significant life changes. He's decided to close his antique archaeology store in Nashville after 15 years to focus more on his hometown of LeClaire, Iowa, where his 81-year-old mother still lives. He described this as a tough decision, but emphasized his desire to spend more time with family. Additionally, the show will be taking its first extended hiatus in 15 years in 2025, with plans to return after a 4 to 5 month break. Mike has been open about the sadness and loss he's experienced in 2024, particularly regarding Frank's passing, reflecting on these challenges in a New Year's Eve social media post. While Mike continues the picking legacy, there's been no indication whatsoever that there was any foul play involved in Frank's death, or that Rick Harrison, a reality star from an entirely different show on the same network, had any connection to Frank Fritz. The two shows, Pawn Stars and American Pickers, while both airing on the History Channel, feature completely separate groups of people who work in different cities and different areas of the antiques and collectibles business. So why would someone create such an elaborate and false narrative about these reality TV stars? Fake stories like this one often thrive in today's digital ecosystem for several reasons. First, they generate clicks, views, and engagement, which translate to advertising revenue for the creators. The more outrageous the claim, the more people tend to click and share, creating a financial incentive for fabrication. Second, social media algorithms often prioritize content that generates strong emotional reactions, regardless of its accuracy. Third, the decline of traditional media gatekeepers has created an environment where unverified information can spread rapidly before fact-checkers can respond. This particular story seems designed to capitalize on the fame of both Pawn Stars and American Pickers, weaving their real-life personalities into a fictional crime narrative to generate maximum interest. It exploits the public's fascination with true crime and conspiracy theories, combining elements of both to create a compelling but entirely fictional narrative. The story also plays on real-life events, Frank's death and Rick's legal dispute with his mother, but distorts them beyond recognition into a sensational criminal conspiracy. The consequences of spreading such misinformation extend far beyond simple confusion. False stories can damage reputations, cause emotional distress to family members and friends, and erode public trust in media. For Rick Harrison, who is still grieving the loss of his son, these fabrications add unnecessary pain to already difficult circumstances. For Frank Fritz's loved ones, false stories about his death disrespect his memory and the genuine health struggles he faced. And for Mike Wolfe, who lost a lifelong friend and continues to honor his legacy, these lies undermine the real relationship they shared. The spread of such misinformation also contributes to a broader societal problem: the erosion of shared truth. When sensational lies compete with verifiable facts, it becomes increasingly difficult for the public to discern reality from fiction. This has serious implications for our society's ability to make informed decisions about everything from health to politics. The proliferation of false narratives like this one conditions people to be skeptical of legitimate information sources and more accepting of outlandish claims without evidence. As consumers of media, we have a responsibility to be critical of the content we encounter and share. Before believing sensational claims, ask yourself, what is the source? Is it reputable? Are mainstream news outlets reporting the same information? Can the claims be verified by official records? Is there a logical reason why this major story isn't being covered by established news organizations? Taking these simple steps can help prevent the spread of harmful misinformation and protect both yourself and others from being misled. It's also important to understand how these fake stories are constructed. The conspiracy narrative about Rick Harrison follows familiar patterns. It starts with a kernel of truth. Rick Harrison is a real person who owns a pawn shop, and then adds layers of increasingly outlandish claims. It includes specific but fabricated details to create an illusion of authenticity. It alleges a cover-up to explain why mainstream sources aren't reporting the story. And it often includes a call to do your own research without providing credible sources. Recognizing these patterns can help inoculate yourself against similar deceptions in the future. The reality of Rick Harrison, Frank Fritz, and Mike Wolfe is far less sensational than the fictional narrative being spread online, but it's much more human. They are real people with real struggles, achievements, and relationships, not characters in a crime thriller. Rick continues his work on Pawn Stars while advocating against the drugs that took his son's life. Frank Fritz faced significant health challenges that ultimately led to his passing, leaving behind a legacy as a knowledgeable and passionate picker. Mike Wolfe honors his friend's memory while continuing their shared passion for preserving pieces of American history. Despite their television fame, these men face the same joys and sorrows as anyone else: family conflicts, health issues, grief, and professional challenges. The fictional conspiracy narrative not only distorts their public personas, but also dehumanizes them, turning real people into characters in a fabricated drama. By rejecting these false stories and seeking accurate information, we show respect for their humanity and their right to have their true stories told. The truth may not be as shocking as fiction, but it deserves to be known and respected. By sharing this video and speaking out against false information, you help create a more honest online environment. Remember, the next time you see an outrageous claim about a public figure, take a moment to verify before you share. The truth matters, not just for these television personalities, but for all of us who value honesty and integrity in our shared digital spaces. In closing, let's remember that while conspiracy theories may be entertaining to some, they can cause real harm to real people. Rick Harrison is not a criminal mastermind. He's a businessman and television personality grieving the loss of his son. Frank Fritz was not murdered. He died from complications of a stroke after years of health struggles. Mike Wolfe did not lose a friend to foul play. He lost him to illness and was by his side in his final moments. These are the facts, and they deserve to be respected.